Hello and welcome to the Dark Power YouTube channel. Now, this is a bit weird, isn't it? Who is this guy? Well, I'm Joe and I make everything that you see appearing on the channel. Now, it's not like I haven't popped up on the channel before, and that's often been coincidental. It's when I've been showing off a costume I might have made or that I've strayed into shot. And the reason for that is really that I made a conscious decision when I first started doing the channel to not appear. I really wanted the focus of the channel to be on the work that I was putting together rather than me, because I could sort of be anyone really. And the simple fact is, speaking on camera is a bit tricky, I've actually done this about 4 or 5 times already, so I'm hoping I can get through this without screwing up too badly. I'm one of these people that the minute you sort of turn on the microphone or turn on the camera, I sort of instantly forget how to speak and sentences sort of come out a bit garbled or I say the wrong words or something like that. So you might occasionally see some jumps in the video where I've had to make an edit, a bit like that one. And now that's a lot easier to do if you're just doing audio. And I've sort of become quite proficient at editing together all the broken sentences that I record and sort of coming up with some dialogue for the videos that sounds quite coherent and hopefully flows. But that's a lot harder to do with video because obviously you'll see the jumps and so forth. So there's a bit of a challenge to sort of doing this, but I'm sort of hoping that if I can get good at it, it might make things a little bit easier. Obviously the videos are quite heavily edited, and that's partly because of my inability to speak in coherent sentences, but also because I like to actually have some visuals to accompany the dialogue, and obviously I'm explaining sometimes some quite complicated things, so you need to have some editing involved to make that a sort of a complete picture and to sort of explain what you're doing. But I think if I can get good at this, it might actually make things a little bit easier for me, because then I can just sort of sit down, talk about what I'm saying, and then get through it without having to sort of spend an hour or two editing the dialogue to make it fit. So why am I suddenly appearing on camera? Well, basically I've been doing the channel now for 5 or 6 years, and I've sort of fallen into quite a comfortable pattern, I think. We sort of start with a montage of the particular item in question, go through the process of making it, and then sort of have a final sort of series of shots talking about how things went. And that's worked well enough, and certainly a lot of people have got in touch saying that they find it quite refreshing to have someone actually explain what they do. A lot of the videos I've seen online do tend to be just a time lapse with some music of someone sculpting something or making something, and they can be quite good. There's that sort of ASMR thing, I think, that sort of relaxation type videos, and they can be quite nice just to sort of have that process evolve in front of you with some sort of soothing music. But as you probably realise from the channel, I'm very interested in the way things are put together and the processes and the techniques that go into putting these things together, and I think a lot of you are as well, because I really appreciate all of the questions and comments that people have given on the videos over the years. So I started thinking, well, is there a way that I could perhaps freshen up the look of the channel and just give a little bit of a different sort of presentational style? And so this sort of seemed like a good way of actually doing it. And certainly a lot of the channels that I watch do tend to have someone speaking to camera. So I think there might be something about just having that human element in the video that sort of allows someone to connect with the video a little bit more, perhaps. So I'm going to give this a go. I'm not going to be popping up on camera every 2 seconds. A lot of it's going to be focused on the work, which is the intention of the channel after all. But let me know what you think. Is this the sort of thing that you think is going to work? Does it make a difference? Do you care either way? I'm interested to know, because obviously there's quite a lot of you watching now. There's 22,000 subscribers on the channel. Videos usually get around 1,000 views every month, which is nothing in the grand scheme of things on YouTube, but it's a lot to me. Having 1,000 people look at something I've made, that's nuts. I would never have thought that I'd have that sort of audience. So it's really nice to sort of have that degree of reach, and also to have the feedback from people. So please do let me know what you think of this, whether this is going to help at all. Now, as well as giving a fresh style to the channel, there's a number of other reasons that I want to do this. Now, I suspect many of you won't be surprised to know that I do all of this in my spare time. And there reaches a point for many of us, I think, who are makers, where you start thinking, well, could I perhaps do this as a job? Is there a way of me sort of taking what sort of started as a hobby, but that has sort of grown, and sort of making it my career? And I've always said with the work that I do that it's sort of more than a hobby but less than a job, and that it's kind of an obsession really. I spend every waking moment that I have spare working on this stuff. Is there a way that I could perhaps build this, and sort of start doing it in a slightly more professional way? So I've started to make a few sort of tentative steps towards that, and the first part of that is something you've sort of seen me doing on YouTube and on Instagram, if you follow me there, which is all the skulls I've been working on. So you may have seen some of these guys floating about on Instagram and on the channel. There's a few others around here. This little pinhead skull as well. I mean, this started off as a sort of just an interest, really. I did a skull because I wanted to have practice doing them, you know, and get good at doing skulls. But they sort of proved quite popular, and I started thinking, well, maybe this is something that I could actually do as a sort of an online shop, because a lot of the stuff I do, obviously, it's monsters and robots, and obviously that sort of line of model making and sculpture is a little bit niche, and skulls too are niche, but they're a little bit more widely appreciated, I think, than sort of monsters and robots. So I started thinking, well, maybe that's something I could do that would be slightly more appealing to a broader audience, that I could sell and perhaps start making some items for an online store. So that's what I've been working on and sort of building up from where I started with the original skull videos I did a year or two ago. So to that end, I've started up an Etsy store, which is this, which I'm calling the Sculpture Studio, and I've sort of split it off slightly from the Dark Power YouTube channels, partly because I didn't want to sort of bombard everybody with marketing. It's quite important to me that the channel remain something for people who are interested in this sort of stuff, who want to just sort of share techniques and ideas and sort of go into it. So I'm not going to be bombarding you with marketing for this. I'm not going to be putting adverts every 2 seconds, but I will be mentioning it occasionally. So if you do see me mentioning this is what it is. It's just a first initial attempt to try and get some sort of revenue coming into the channel to try and help grow things, basically. Something I've also been thinking about is actually starting up a Patreon. Now, obviously, this is something that many YouTubers do, and the reason I've been thinking about doing it is because I've had some emails from a few people now asking whether I do lessons, which isn't something I'd really thought about previously, but obviously there is a sort of an educational or sort of an instructional quality to a lot of my videos. So it did start me thinking, would there be an interest for people in something that's a little bit more in-depth than the current videos I do? I do focus on certain techniques and certain ways of doing things in the videos, and sometimes I go into depth and sometimes I don't. But I did think, well, maybe there's room for a Patreon, so a paid sort of subscription model, where there would be sort of slightly more in-depth videos than what I put on the channel, you know, sort of very in-depth how to make molds video, a very in-depth casting video, and so on. So I'm interested to know what people think of that. Is that something you would be interested in seeing? Would you want to sign up to that sort of thing? Obviously, it's something that millions of YouTubers are doing, so it's by no means a unique thought. But if you do want to grow a channel, if you do want to sort of change your lifestyle and sort of become a kind of a working artist, really, you need to start thinking about the sort of the economics of that sort of situation. So let me know what you think. Is that something that would be interesting to you? What sort of thing would you want to see on it? So I'm interested to know what you think on that, so please do let me know. Something I've also been thinking about doing is maybe sort of broadening the scope of the channel slightly. So for actually a couple of years now, I think since the beginning of the lockdown 2 years ago now, I've had a video on the timeline sort of partially edited talking about motivation. And that's something I've struggled with quite a lot with projects, and sort of just maintaining the focus on a project, particularly if it's something that's going to last for months. How do you sort of keep your interest going? How do you just keep the momentum on a project and not lose interest in it? Because I'm quite prone to that, and one of the reasons I actually started the YouTube channel in the first place is to sort of try and spur myself to actually see projects through to the end. A lot of the time I would be very guilty of sort of having an initial burst of energy on a project and sort of spending a couple of weeks of intense activity and then just losing interest and not finishing it. So I figured, well, if I've done a YouTube video on it and I've done part 1, then I've got to do part 2, because people have been watching part 1 and are expecting a conclusion. And I have found that that's really helped. People just watching and commenting on the video has really sort of given me the enthusiasm to continue with a particular project. It hasn't worked in every single instance, but a lot of the time it has. So that's something I kind of wanted to talk about, but because the channel has mostly been focused on making stuff, I wasn't really sure whether it would be a comfortable fit. But I do think if I'm going to be doing these sort of slightly more to camera things, then maybe talking more peripherally about issues that affect sculpture and making projects might be of interest. Things like, I've said, how do you keep motivation for a project, but also things like, well, what should I charge for a sculpture if I'm making something for someone? And these are sort of questions that often come up for makers, and I think it's always interesting to discuss them. So something I'm thinking about doing is maybe doing some videos that are a bit more, informal like this, just talking about issues around sculpture. And things that we sort of struggle with, and things that will sort of impact on the way we actually make stuff. So again, let me know if that's something you'd be interested in hearing. It's certainly something I'd be interested in talking about and seeing what people think. So that might be something else I sort of do on the channel as well. But for the time being, I think that's it really. I just wanted to sort of give an update on where things are going, just so people aren't surprised when things sort of look slightly different. Like I said, things aren't going to change particularly hugely, but I do want to sort of try and expand things slightly and try and sort of push the channel forward a bit. And see where we can go with it. So I think that's it. So I just want to say thanks for all of the attention that you've given me over the years. I really appreciate everyone that's watched the videos and commented and given feedback and ideas. And it's been great just to speak to people with similar interests, because I don't know about you, but I have friends who are into making stuff, but not that many who are into exactly the same sort of stuff as me. So it's really nice to talk to people with very similar interests who sort of appreciate monsters and robots and all the rest of it. So that's it from me. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.